Thank you. So good afternoon. This is the October 14, 2020 meeting of the Business Operations Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. We're conducting this meeting virtually via web conference. This meeting includes a public dial-in option that's available on the Charter Commission's website. Chanel, would you please reference circumstances behind the virtual meeting and the relevant TCS?
Good afternoon, Tom. Given the current COVID-19 pandemic and concerns for public safety and welfare, as well as the pandemic's impact on the Commission's budget, this meeting is being conducted by electronic means. And this is provided by TCA 844-108 and is also referenced in Governor Lee's Executive Order 60. This meeting is being recorded and it will be available at the conclusion via a link that's provided on the Commission's website, and a call-in number was provided on the Commission's website for the public to participate in today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanel. As a reminder, all votes of the committee are conducted via taking a roll call. Please identify yourself prior to speaking, making a motion, or voting. So Judy, to see if we all understand that direction, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Chairman Sisnett. Commissioner Sisnett.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Chairman Griscom.
Here. There must have been a coup at some point since the last meeting, but that's okay.
Judy wasn't supposed to tell you that yet, Tom.
That's all right.
We have 3 of 3 committee members present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you, Judy. Today's agenda includes a review of proposed commission meeting dates, a review of our office space, a presentation on the FY22 budget, and an update from Tess, our now on board executive director. I'm glad to have you, Tess. Are there any comments about the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
This is Commissioner Sisnett, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Eddie Smith, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Judy, would you call, please?
Commissioner Sisnett.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Chairman Griscom.
Aye.
3 of 3, the agenda is adopted.
Thank you. Now let's move to the minutes from our last meeting, which was on August 18, 2020. They have been shared with the committee in advance. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Eddie Smith, I'll make the motion.
Have a second?
That's Commissioner Sisnett, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Judy, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Sisnett.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Chairman Griscom.
Aye.
3 of 3, the minutes are approved.
Thank you. Since we last met, Tess and I have discussed meeting dates, a meeting date structure for the commission for the upcoming calendar year. It includes 4 quarterly meetings that are 2 days in length. The first day will be for committee meetings, and the second day will be a meeting of the entire commission. I also want to make a point here that as Tess and I reviewed this, we also looked at available space for us to meet as a commission. So that's why you saw some of the dates at different parts of the week, but it's to make sure that we would have access to a place for us to meet and to meet safely as well. So Tess, please review the proposed meeting dates for the commission for the 2021 calendar year, and then we'll discuss them as a committee.
Sure. So we have proposed the following dates for the quarterly meetings. First in quarter 1, February 4th and the 5th, and then quarter 2, April 8th and the 9th. I want to note for the committee that these are scheduled for both to be held in Nashville and also to be scheduled on Thursdays and Fridays, in particular, expecting the General Assembly to be in session typically Monday through Wednesday of those weeks. So meeting rooms can be hard to find in Nashville on Mondays through Wednesdays. For Q3, we're looking at a July 12th and 13th. And Q4, we're looking at October 11th and 12th. These are Mondays and Tuesdays, again, to ensure that we're able to get the correct space, and also to provide some variety to the commission in terms of timing of meetings. We are at this point proposing that those 2 meetings be held outside of Nashville. And I'm happy to take any questions from the committee at this time.
So Tess, let me add a couple points for Eddie and for Derwin. As you look at these dates, one of the things Tess and I talked about, and we don't know the answer yet, is looking at them, particularly in terms of hopefully being able to meet in person again, or maybe to have a hybrid type option if there's still commissioners who might not feel comfortable about coming to an in-person meeting. So as we looked at this, that's why the first 2, Q1 and 2, as Tess said, in Nashville are on a Thursday, Friday, so that the legislature is not in session and we would have access to a meeting space. So we'll know as we go forward about whether we're able to meet in person, but I want to add that to the discussion we had and to share that with Eddie, with you and Derwin as well as you look at this. I do believe, Tess, that the dates were shared with all commissioners in advance of our meeting, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
That is correct. These dates have been shared with all commissioners in advance of this meeting. I asked for commissioners to let me know any significant conflicts by the end of the week last week. I heard from one commissioner who is unable to make one of the 4 meetings, but the rest of the meetings we should have no problem in terms of quorum.
Thank you. Discussion.
One quick question.
Go ahead. Thank you.
So this is Eddie. So just thinking through the calendar, and I apologize, this just hit me as I was looking at this. When would we expect in this calendar that we might hear our first set of appeals? And the reason I ask that is it wise for us to be out of Nashville and away from our staff's ability to grab documents and things if that is the July timeframe?
Great question. So this is based on, I think, the first set of appeals that the commission might face in terms of known timeline would be at the Q2 meeting, the April 8th and 9th. That is based on the expectation that districts would be voting on renewal applications no later than February the 1st. And then the commission would have 75 days upon receipt of an appeal to hear and vote on those appeals. The Q4 date, so the October 11th and 12th dates, are when the commission would be scheduled to hear New Start appeals. And so I will say from my own experience that from the state board that it is not atypical that the state board is out of Nashville for the New Start appeal meetings where those are being held. So I'm fully prepared to be able to travel wherever is necessary. So to me, that's not necessarily a barrier, but certainly open to thinking through that differently as you all are considering these dates.
No, and I'm good with that. I just, more than anything, I guess wanted all of that on the record just so that discussion was being had.
Thank you. Derwin, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, as far as I'm concerned, I went back to double check that these dates were the ones I put on my calendar when they were sent out, and they are. And these dates work, I think, as with regard to being in person or not. I think hopefully by then, and even now, I'm warming up to what things look like in the coming months, and so. Certainly am planning to be there in person, obviously, depending on how the situation is, what social distance looks like. But the goal is to be there in person, and I'm totally fine with that. And as well as the places that are not in Nashville, whether it's Memphis, obviously, or some other location in Tennessee.
Thank you. So if we approve these dates, then they will be presented to the commission for approval at our next regular meeting. So I want to make sure you're all aware of that. Did I have another question? I'm sorry.
Yes, this is Judy Spencer. Tess, I just wanted to ask if there was any concern about the October dates possibly falling during fall break, since we're kind of there right now, and I've noticed there's been a lot of people that are out kind of in these 2 weeks of October.
I agree, Judy. I think where we struggle with those October dates is that, again, we have a statutory deadline to complete appeals no later than 75 days after receipt of an appeal. So that is really taking into account as much time as we possibly can while also still managing through the break. So, I mean, again, I didn't hear any reactions to conflicts beyond one commissioner who's not able to make the Q4 date. But I would be open to the committee. If you all want me to go look in potentially a week before or a week after to see if we could make it work, the question is really going to be that statutory timeline and if we can make sure and guarantee that we would be able to vote within those 75 days.
Well, and I can say, this is Eddie Smith, I can say that Easter is early April this year. So usually fall break is the week before that. So the we have on here right now would be after most people's spring breaks. As far as fall breaks, I mean, if it's Monday, Tuesday, they usually get a week. My kids would enjoy 2 days in Nashville to go do some things. So it's not going to affect me in the least. And I've got kids that would be out on fall break. I don't know about Derwin or any of the other commissioners.
Yes, I agree. I think in terms of fall break, it's to your point, with my daughter, this fall break is long enough. And obviously this year looked a little different, but it's long enough that a couple of days in a different location. If it's in Memphis, then we'll just be home. But if it's not, then it'll just be a great adventure to tag on to the fall break, and she'll probably just avoid the meetings just if she wants to still have fun. But outside of that, it'll still work for me.
Right. Judy, thanks for raising that point. Based on that, do I have a motion to approve these meeting dates?
This is Commissioner Cisnet, so moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Eddie Smith, and I'll second.
Thank you, Eddie. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Judy, would you call the roll, please?
Judy, you're muted.
Muted, Judy.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Cisnet,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Chairman Griscom.
Aye.
3 of 3, the meeting dates are approved.
Thank you all. Our next item is to discuss office space and a proposed recommendation. Tess and Judy have been discussing options for securing our office space with the state of Tennessee's Real Estate Asset Management Division, referred to as STREAM. Tess has developed a revised proposal based on commission feedback and ongoing conversations with STREAM. So Tess, would you please share with us the proposal that you've put together?
Great, thank you. So as we have previously discussed at this committee meeting and with the Charter Commission, the Charter Commission needs to identify office space. And prior to me assuming this role as the executive director, potential office space had been identified on the 5th floor of Davy Crockett Tower at 500 James Robertson Parkway. So since the last meeting of this committee, Judy and I had a meeting with the STREAM representatives to get additional information and to have some of the questions that were raised by the committee answered. So the recommendation that's before you today regarding the commission's office space is based on the kind of the following updates and key pieces of information for you all to consider when thinking about this recommendation. So first, due to the pandemic, I think it's really important for all of us to understand that state office real estate and agency demand for real estate has dramatically changed from when this conversation first started in January and February of 2020. The good news is that this puts the Charter Commission in a great spot in terms of taking advantage of office space and really utilizing our budget regarding rent as we need it. The STREAM individuals really recommended that the Charter Commission only acquire space immediately based on what it needs now, and then it has the ability to grow its office space as the commission is adding staff members. They also noted in our meeting that there is a larger conversation that is happening around state real estate and kind of the location of agencies and the office space that agencies are taking up. I think given the fact that many agencies are moving to an alternative workspace where there's more remote work happening, I think there's more agencies opting to shrink their footprint. This all be given said that there may be a larger proposal happening at the state level with regard to state agencies and allocations of space. And so I think it's important for us to go into this conversation knowing that in 2 or 3 years, we may be asked to be relocating to a different spot based on how the state as in general is thinking about allocation of office space and and how they're putting all of the puzzle pieces together. So the commission would have a right of first refusal on additional space in the 5th floor. In the beginning of the conversations around office space, there was another agency that was interested in taking space on the 5th floor. And so there was a lot more urgency around our decision making that was needed. However, given the changes that have happened because of the pandemic, that other agency that was contemplating a move to the 5th floor has now declined such a move. So that still remains the 5th floor. The only other occupant is the State Board of Education. And then the Charter Commission would be the second occupant with a significant amount of open space on that floor for eventual a growth from the Charter Commission. So the proposal before you all today is to allow the Charter Commission to initially establish itself with 2 offices, a cubicle and a copy file room. By acquiring this initial space, we will be able to solidify an address. I know Chanel has been thinking about that with regard to public records. It will allow us to, have branding as it relates to where we are established, but not to take on more office space than we really need at this point. It will also allow the Charter Commission to have access to all of the common spaces and the conference rooms in the building. And this is particularly important because we are in conversations with Commerce and Insurance to potentially use some of their board meeting rooms for some of our meetings in 2021. And as I previously discussed with the commission in a point of, I think, hesitation, was that Stream did confirm that the policy as it stands right now is that an agency would have to backfill if they wanted to move space, so that we would be responsible for finding our replacement. However, they did note that the state, as it's taking a more holistic look at its footprint and the allocation of space, that they are revisiting this policy, just given the drastically changing office space demands that are happening. And then the last thing that I wanted to note in the proposal of the recommendation is that it would delegate authority to me as the executive director to be able to work with Stream to acquire additional space as needed, up to the 10 approved positions that the commission already has approved. And that I would be providing regular updates to this committee through our committee meetings on any additional space that is acquired through that process. And with that, I am happy to take any additional questions or open it up for committee discussion.
Tom, you're muted.
Thank you. Judy has to take care of me now. So, Eddie, you toured this space originally, so I would ask you if there's any thoughts you have. I think that what Tess has laid out and we'll be able to get to is something that allows us to grow as we need to, allows us, as she said, to not be competing with somebody else, but at the same time, not to have space if we get to a point where we realize we don't need it. And it just becomes a cost factor for us. So, but let me turn to you, Eddie, because I know you've seen it. If there's any other thoughts or comments you want to make.
Yeah, and as Tess pointed out, I mean, a couple of factors that we didn't have when we first toured it, when I first toured the area with Eve, which was when DIDS was looking at moving, we were under more of a gun that we were going to need to secure our space. But with them having backed out and declined moving, I like the proposal that's before us that gives, we don't meet every single week. We meet once a quarter as a subcommittee. So I think giving our executive director the flexibility to work within the budget we've already preset is a wise move because, we've hired her for these purposes. So based on what I've seen and what I've read in this proposal, I would make that motion that we would approve this recommendation from our executive director.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Cisnet. I second.
Thank you. Derwin, I'm not trying to cut off discussion. Are there any comments that you would like to make?
I wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner Smith and want to follow suit. So no, I have nothing else to add to that.
Thank you. And again, just like our last action, once we approve it, then this will go to the full commission for their approval at our next meeting. So any other discussion? Not seeing any. Judy, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Cisnet.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Chairman Griscom.
Aye.
3 of 3, the office space proposal is approved.
Great. Thank you. Our next item is to talk about the FY 2022 budget. I think the time that's been spent and the communication that both Chris and Tess have had, I think, helped us clarify some things. Tess, I know you and Chris are going to walk us through this, so let me just turn to you all to talk to us about the budget proposal before us.
Great, thank you so much. As we have discussed, I think the FY22 budget is really a critical operational step for the agency, knowing that in fiscal year 22, it's when the commission will assume all responsibilities from the State Board of Education. It's also a critical year because it will be when the Charter Commission will begin collecting authorizer fee revenue from its charter schools. So what I would like to do first is kind of take the budget piece by piece, give you all an overview of some of the assumptions, and then we'll pause for questions. So Judy, if you wouldn't mind scrolling to the spreadsheet where the budget is, because I want to talk about the revenue, the projected revenue first. So when Chris and I were working on this proposed budget, there are a couple of key things that I want to point out to the committee. First, you will see that the state funds, we have $707,300 that's going to be recurring state dollars. The $250,000 that had been non-recurring state dollars will, at this point in the FY22 budget proposal, that we, in terms of funding, will go away. We will be beginning to get authorizer fee revenue, and we have projected that to be approximately $591,000. And I want to put a big asterisk on that projection because as those of you who understand the school funding cycle, we really don't have I would say a really super accurate sense of what school funding is going to look like in FY22 until at the earliest March of 2021. And so both from the authorizer fee perspective, as well as the other revenues that we've included here as the BEP pass through and the federal grant pass through, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page to know that these estimates are the best that we have as we're sitting right here, right now, with knowing that we will have 3 authorized charter schools that are coming to the Charter Commission from the State Board. We potentially have 2 additional schools that are opening from the most recent State Board approved schools. But there's a lot that's changing with regard to school choice, school enrollment, school funding as it relates to the pandemic. And so I think what I would be asking you all today is to really, this is the best estimates we have right now. But beginning in March, April, June of the 2021, I'll be able to provide much clearer revenue updates, specifically as it relates to the school funding piece. And Judy, if you wouldn't mind, can you scroll to the next page where we get into the detail around the authorizer fee? So in the packet that we've provided to you, we have provided background information of how we got to the projections of the authorizer fee. Again, this is based on information that we know currently right now, and based on the current year BEP rate. So again, the BEP rate is very likely to change when we're looking at FY22. I think some of these enrollment numbers could be changing. So where I need you all to kind of understand the flexibility and kind of just work, this is as much as of a ballpark as we possibly can around the authorizer fee, and that come March and April, we'll know much more about what that authorizer fee revenue will look like for FY22. So I want to pause there on the revenue piece and just to see if the committee has any questions, particularly knowing that this is the first time that we're really talking about the authorizer fee revenue. And I want to just make sure that there's real clarity there around the authorizer fee, the pass-through dollars before we talk about some of the proposed expenditures. Tom, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Tess, would you share with all of us conversations that you have had with the governor's budget people, and particularly the conversation about authorizer fees? Because I think when you shared that back with me, it was to me, it was very interesting to understand they see this, they anticipate there might be some additional revenues coming in. I think it helps us as we look at the numbers here that has been part of the conversation, but that was not something they looked at that said, then we got to come back in someplace else and make reductions.
That's correct. So when I had a conversation with Finance and Administration a couple weeks ago with regard to the FY22 budget, there is a recognition by the administration that FY22 will be the first year that we will be seeing authorizer fee revenue, and that also there's a lot of unknowns as it relates to what that revenue rate is going to be. And so the recommendation that they gave me when we're thinking about our budget is to have a conservative estimate on the authorizer fee revenue, and that as we move forward, that they are going to work with us to figure out what does a stabilization rate for us in terms of revenue look like for FY22 and beyond, as we get a sense of what does a stabilized authorizer fee revenue look like, knowing that every year right now, we are in a changing landscape as we add additional schools, as our schools continue to grow out, that this will have to be a very fluid conversation, that we are in very close touch with Finance and Administration and the governor's team to make sure that we have a stable operating budget and that we are able to really use our dollars to the fullest extent. And if necessary, be returning authorizer fee dollars to our charter schools and or reverting funds back to the general purpose budget as necessary.
Other questions at this point? I don't see any. Tess, would you like, you want to continue?
Yes, I will continue now into the expenditures piece. And so we can talk about some of those estimates that we've made.
Tess, can I make a comment?
Sure, absolutely.
I just want to clarify for the committee members that there's such a large number in the revenue section, 20+ million. If the BEP changes, the amount of money that would be passed through to the schools would also change. So I just want to clarify for everyone that because that is a large number and because it is likely to change, the ins and the outs would be the same, subject to change. So I just want to point that out.
Great, thanks, Chris. So when we're thinking about proposed budget expenditures for FY22, we have broken these down into the major categories that were based on the FY21 budget. So starting first, the proposed salaries and benefits, the total compensation is projected at approximately $845,900 for 10 positions. It's important to note that this is currently the maximum amount that the Charter Commission is authorized by the Department of Finance and Administration to spend in salaries and benefits. This is also known as above the line expenditures. And the way the state budget works is that if we as a charter commission would like to move money above the line, that has to be a part of our budget requests. And so I have asked Finance and Administration to move approximately $280,000 additional dollars into the salaries and benefit category. I think the reality is that if the Charter Commission wants to competitively hire the remaining positions it's authorized to fill, that it's going to need additional funds to do that. The additional funds that I am proposing to move up above the line would come through the authorizer fee revenue. So we would not be having to ask for additional state revenue to move this. It would be moving some of those authorizer fee revenues up. For the conversation today, those additional funds are currently categorized in the unclassified and under expenditure line item. I think what I would like particular feedback from you all as a charter commission is, in a committee, is that when I'm presenting this budget to the full charter commission in 2 weeks, would you want me to go ahead and assume and move that $280,000 above the line, knowing that it still has to go through the state approval process? You know, the cake is not baked until the budget is passed in April by the General Assembly. Or would you rather me keep it in the unclassified other expenditure line for now, knowing that if we are approved to move those funds above the line, that those funds would, in a revised budget, would be moved up? I'll pause there because that's a big question, and I want to get y'all's feedback on how we should be presenting this budget.
Mr. Chairman, I would love to, I guess really this is directed at you, Tess. Would love to get your thoughts on what you think is the best route. It sounds like having flexibility while still having some boundaries seems to be the best route, but would love to get your thoughts on which path you feel more comfortable following or most comfortable following.
Well, I want you all as a committee to know that I've already included that ask as it relates to when Finance and Administration said, what are your proposed funding streams and is there any changes you want to make? I've already said I would prefer, I would like for us to be, for the consideration to happen to be money above the line. I like to think about it is, do you all want to deal with real numbers or projected numbers? And I mean that as the budget and the salaries and expenses that the salaries and benefits you're seeing right now are what I would consider real numbers. We know that's an approved budget by Finance and Administration. We can absolutely spend up into that 845. If we add the 280 in, I think I will be operating until I see an approved budget by the General Assembly that I can't spend that 280 until I see an approved budget. So although you all have approved it, I'll be kind of keeping it off to the side until it gets through that state approval process and we were able to say for sure that's the budget that we have. So I think it could go either way. I just want to be fully transparent with you all and also the commission about kind of, to a certain extent, what we're approving today versus what a revised budget might look like in June once we hear back from the General Assembly.
So, Eddie, let me ask you, because of your experience as a legislator, and you've shared a lot with us since we have come together as a commission, can you give us some insights to the point that, to Derwin's question to Tess and what she just said, particularly from a legislative point of view?
Yeah, so, I mean, a couple of points and just walking you through. So I think it'll be the first Monday in February is when the governor will present the budget, and that's when everyone will get basically the base budget book. That's that big, thick book that everybody gets every year. Then the governor will come back probably sometime in late March, early April with a supplemental budget based on how revenues have changed from January, February, March. At that supplemental, things can either go up or down. As we saw this year, once COVID hit, from when the governor presented the budget to when we got to April, everything went backwards very quickly. So, there's a lot that can happen in a very short amount of time. Historically, outside of this past year and for the last 5 years, what happened was we actually had more, the state was able to recognize more revenue than what they had originally planned on, which allowed for additional things to happen. I think looking ahead to the 2022 year, there's so many unknowns that we need to be prepared for kind of quo of where we were for kind of what we saw the General Assembly pass this year, which was a very slimmed down budget. I think once we get past this year, the state is probably going to be in much better shape. But again, I think you've got to look at a couple of things. Look at the funding board, which will meet, they meet in December or November. I think they meet in November, the state funding board. And that's when they will kind of give a base recommendation that the budget cannot grow by 2.2%. So that gives us a very good frame that we know we're all going to be working within. Then the governor will go through the process of soliciting everything from all the departments. So there's a whole lot of, I'd love to give you a very easy solution to that. I think we're just going to have to watch it, as Tess said, as it goes through the process to see where we are, because there's so many unknowns right now. I think everybody, not have Butch's job right this minute for anything under the world, because August revenues looked great. We're waiting to see what September revenues look like. So, there's also some ticking time bombs, just so everybody's aware. You look at Davidson County, it looks like the General Assembly may have to step with some emergency cash assistance just to help Davidson County. So there's so many unknowns right now that me sitting here in October trying to help you all know what might happen, if I had that, I would be making a lot more money doing something else. Was that helpful, or did you all just get more confused?
No, thank you, Eddie. That's why I wanted your guy. So, and thank both you and Derwin for your comments. So, Tess, here's my thought. We know this is here. We know we've had a conversation and we're looking at this. My preference always is going to be to err on the side of transparency. And I would like for us as a commission and us as a committee to say, this is where we want to be, what we're looking at. Now, we can then make adjustments back, Eddie, to your point. If the bottom falls out, we know it's a whole different set of things that we're going to have to deal with. But there is part of me that says, I'd like to sort of say, this is where we are. This is where we want to be, and have that out there, so that if, to Eddie's point, if all of a sudden, hey, things have sort of leveled out and all this, then we come back then and say, well, since we're here, by the way, we would like to add this. So my preference would be, with that caveat, is we're a startup. This was set up with certain funding in place, and looking at it for us to do the things to really get going, that we need to make some adjustments here. We've had conversations with the administration about this. Here's what we're proposing, but at the same time, if in fact revenues or whatever don't stay where they are, we can make the adjustments we need to. So my preference would be to go ahead and show, this is what we're looking at. This is where we think we need to be to get set up. So I offer that in this conversation.
No, I agree with that. And what I want to make sure I'm hearing correctly is that when I am presenting the proposed FY22 budget to the full commission, that we will go ahead and recognize above the line. So in the salary and benefit line, we're going to recognize that the $276,000 I have asked to be moved above the line. And that if for whatever reason we are not granted that request through the budgeting process, that we will come back and revise the budget. I think regardless, we will be talking about a budgetary revision, sometime probably Q2, Q3 of the 21 calendar year, once we see the state budget process going through, once we know more about what BEP revenue looks like. But we will potentially revisit the compensation part depending on what we hear from the legislature in terms of their budgeting process. Is that an accurate summation of what I heard from this committee?
That sort of summarizes what I put out for Derwin and Eddie to think about and see if they're in agreement with that type of an approach. Yes.
And this is Eddie, and I do agree with that approach. I mean, I think we need to, as you said, present basically our base budget. Here's what we need to operate as things stands right now, you know, with the thought that, hey, we also have this budget of how things could operate better if revenues were significantly more and we were able to get some more funding. This is the bare minimums of what we need to operate in the first year going forward. So yes, I agree with you.
And this is Commissioner South. Agree with that approach.
Thank you. Tess, is there a third piece of this to look at, or does that cover the overview of the budget presentation?
The only other things I wanted to note was just how we were thinking about the additional expenditures. So Judy, still stay there. In terms of we're planning from a commission meeting perspective, this proposed budget includes the 2 meetings that were just approved by the committee. Staff travel is inclusive in this budget. Facilities rent is the full facilities rent, assuming we are fully built out. And then also just the general equipment and supplies and materials. We will be presenting at the Charter Commission meeting, and once we revisit these changes to the budget, we will include the contingency budget with the 12% reduction. In my conversations with finance and administration, we have been asked to make sure we are prepared with the 12% reduction budget. And so you see the far column on the right is currently that 12% reductive budget. And so we will plan to be presenting that to the full commission as well.
Hey, Tess, and I'm pretty sure you said this earlier. By the way, this is Eddie Smith. The 12% reduction is only on the base, not including the BEP dollars and the federal dollars. FNA is not looking at our total bottom line. They're only looking at those pass-through dollars that we have to do the 12%.
Yes, that is correct. So you can see the revenue reduction down to 622. That would be the 12% reduction.
Okay, and I think that's just something that we're just going to have to kind of rehammer over and over again, is that we're only cutting that 12% of the base. We're not allowed, I don't know that we're allowed to touch the BEP dollars and reduce those once that's allocated by the Department of Education.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you for making that point.
So Tess, based on this then, let me, and again, if we approve this recommendation of the budget, it too will go to the full commission at our next meeting in a couple of weeks. So do I have a motion to approve the budget as presented by Tess?
This is Commissioner Cisnet, so moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Eddie Smith, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussion? Judy, may I ask you to call the roll, please?
I believe that we were going to approve the budget as with the adjustment that Tess had said to move the 276 above the line for presentation to the full commission.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Just to be clear. Thank you. Okay, we'll take a roll call. Commissioner Cisnet.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Chairman Griscom.
Yes.
3 of 3, the motion passes.
Great. Thank you all. Tess, I think we're now at a point for you to share with us your update.
Thank you. And I want to note that this is something, this update is something that the chair and I have discussed that I will be providing to every business operations committee meeting, just to keep everyone abreast of what's happening, particularly on the operations front. This will be a relatively short update this time around, but I did want to get this started on our agenda so that we can ensure that I'm keeping you all up to date, as well as you have an opportunity to ask any questions. So from a staffing point of view, really getting started on building out the core staff members. I'm in the process of hiring for the general counsel and the director of external affairs. My goal is for those individuals to be hired sometime middle of November. I'm also working on a job description of kind of a special assistant position, kind of someone to help me, kind of a director of strategy to really help in some of the execution of the operations and initial authorizing functions as we start building out the work. I'm also working on a draft org chart that hopefully at our next committee meeting, I will be able to share with this full committee, just to give you all a sense of how I'm thinking about the distribution of those 10 positions to really focus on the work of both the operations of the agency, the operations of the LEA, and then our charter school appellate operations. From a finance and budget perspective, these updates in this section are going to be anything that's of big note that I want to make the committee aware of. So kind of big dollar items, if anytime I'm coming to you and letting you know or discussing a proposed high dollar contract, this is where I'm going to be presenting that information. So at this point, the couple of notes I wanted to make is that for the FY22 budget, in my conversations with finance and administration, the Charter Commission will continue to be presented under the K-12 budget in the administration's budget, which is inclusive of the Tennessee Department of Education, but does also include separate entities such as the State Board of Education and also the Charter Commission. This is how the FY21 budget was presented. And given the fact that we are in a startup mode, it just made more sense to continue with this process for the FY22 budget. The Charter Commission has become a member of the National Association of Charter School Authorizers. NACSA is a great resource that allows staff members to participate in professional development around authorizing. NACSA came and presented to the Charter Commission in April. It allows access to resources, templates, attendance at conferences, etc. And also the Charter Commission, I went through and selected a vendor to set up the Charter Commission's website so that it is separate and distinct from the Department of Education. The vendor is working very hard, and I've told her that I would like to be launching the separate website the week of November the 2nd. It will still be within the state platform. It will look very similar to the way all state websites look like, but we will have our own landing page, be able to have our own materials, and really to distinguish ourselves as a separate state entity. So I'm really excited to be able to share that with the full commission when that website is launched. And the final thing that I wanted to flag, particularly for this committee, is one of the things that the chair and I have discussed is the future development of a staff policy, where we really delineate where is the delegation of authority to the executive director and the staff, kind of building out some of the things that I think we all have talked around hiring, around contracts. So I think one of the things that the chair and I discussed is, at what threshold of a contract, while certainly all contracts will have to go through the central procurement office process, would I need to bring a contract for committee approval? And so I am going to be working with the Rules and Policy Committee to be defining what a staff policy might look like, and so to further delineate what those delegation of authorities are for the staff versus what would require committee or commission approval. And that is the totality of my updates at this point, and I am happy to take any questions.
Are there questions or comments? One of the other things that Tess and I talked about, I shared, is during my time on the Tennessee Board of Regents, that for those periods of time when we're not meeting quarterly, and I think what you're seeing here is the beginning of this, a periodic update so that commissioners or committee members stay current, as what Tess has laid out here, with things that are happening. Just so we don't come back, say quarterly, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of things have occurred, and we say, well, I wish we had done this. So this is a beginning, and I appreciate Tess doing this to keep us aware as we're going forward of actions that are occurring during the periods of time when we're not actually meeting, either as a committee or as a commission. So Tess, I thank you for doing this. I think we'll find it very informative.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I did want to note that I am sending monthly updates via email to the full commission. I think based on feedback and how we, particularly when it gets to the legislative session, I may be ramping up the frequency of those updates to keep everyone abreast of what's going on. So we'll be kind of seeing about the timing and frequency of those updates just to make sure that people are up to speed on the day-to-day work of the commission. Thank you.
Eddie, do you have a comment?
I do. And one of the things, just as I'm looking at that upcoming policy section, that I really think we ought to, now that we have our executive director as a commission, that we really need to take a very good look at is where we can have noses in, but out, so that our executive director has the ability to actually lead the staff. We just have our noses in so we know what's going on, but we don't have our hands in every single thing that we're trying to make all the decisions. So just as we kind of go to the rules and the policy committee, that's just something that I think we ought to really be taking a very strong look at, of empowering our executive director to lead the organization while we're out here, making sure that everything is staying above board and giving support where she needs support.
Eddie, and thank you for those comments. That's similar to what the discussions that Tess and I have had, is really understanding the oversight role, things like that, versus being in the middle of actually the operational part of it. So thank you for your comments. Any other points to make? Not seeing any. So Tess, let me thank you, Judy, Chris, Chanel, for your continued support of us and the work that you all do every day to get the Charter Commission up and going and functioning. Let me now ask Eddie, either you or Derwin, if you all have any final comments or points you would like to make before I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, the only question I have is, are we going to continue to be this efficient?
Oh, I feel the coup coming again, Tess. This is the coup. Now, here's Eddie. I'll answer it for him. I hope we are, because I think the best run meetings are those that are clear. We know what to talk about. We have a good conversation, and they're organized well. So so that what's put in front of us, we know to react to. But that's a great question.
Well, I just know that we started about 2:02. It is now almost 2:55, so that's about a 53-minute meeting. So if there's no other things, I'm moved to adjourn right on time.
All right.
I second that.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Just that I second that motion.
Thank you all. Thank you much. I appreciate it. And for the focus and direction here. So Judy, let me ask you to call the roll, please.
Sure. Commissioner Cisnet.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Chairman Griscom.
Aye.
3 of 3, the motion passes. We are adjourned.
Thank you all. Have a good rest of the week.
You too.
I'll take it.
Thank you, everybody.